Roger Goodell doesn't usually do this. The NFL commissioner, known for his calculated restraint, has finally erupted, and SHEDEUR Sanders is at the center of it. After months of watching the rookie quarterback get sidelined, scrutinized, and publicly ridiculed, Goodell issued a rare, forceful response, calling out not just coaching decisions, but a broader culture of bias. This wasn't about a single bad call or a tough game. It was about a pattern, where Sanders was targeted by defenders, denied real development opportunities. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. And then attack the media for not rising fast enough. For Goodell, this crossed a line. He isn't just offending one player. He's trying to reset the standard. In calling out Kevin Stefanski for his role in stunting Sanders' growth and naming specific journalists who spread demeaning narratives, Goodell has moved the league into uncharted territory. The NFL is now being asked to choose: maintain a system that marginalizes rising black talent or confront it head-on. Goodell's choice, at least this time, is clear, and by holding both coaches and media accountable, he's setting a precedent that might finally force the league to reckon with how it treats its most vulnerable stars. It's one of the most jarring shifts in NFL leadership we've ever seen, and it's not about money, TV ratings, or new rule changes. It's about the commissioner, Roger Goodell, going directly after the media, a head coach, and the internal systems of the league he runs, all because of how one rookie quarterback, SHEDEUR Sanders, has been treated, and not just poorly treated, systematically undermined. This is about what Goodell is calling a coordinated campaign of hatred against Sanders. That's not media exaggeration. That's the actual language being used from the highest office in pro football. And when you look at what's been happening behind the scenes, the level of dysfunction and, frankly, disrespect becomes hard to ignore. Let's start with the Browns. Kevin Stefanski, the team's head coach, is under heavy fire for how he handled Sanders during his early development. Despite the hype and expectations surrounding SHEDEUR's entry into the league, Stefanski allegedly kept him off the first-team offense almost entirely. Instead of grooming a potential franchise QB, Stefanski put him on the scout team, a spot that's meant for simulating opposing plays, not building your own future. That's not a coaching quirk. That's not tough love. That's sidelining a top prospect while pretending it's part of some larger strategy. And it backfired fast. Relegating Sanders to the scout team means denying him critical development reps. It means no rhythm with the starting receivers, no real chemistry with the offensive line. It's not about learning. It's about getting through the week. And for a rookie quarterback, that's the difference between growing and stalling out. But that's just the beginning. Reports say Sanders wasn't just pushed to the margins. He was targeted. During practice, defenders allegedly went after him with reckless hits, dangerous contact that should have drawn flags, or at the very least, gotten the attention of coaches. But instead, it went unchecked. Refs stayed quiet. Coaches turned away. And SHEDEUR was left to take the punishment while trying to earn a spot he was never really being given a fair shot at. Then the media stepped in and poured gasoline on the fire. Tony Grossi, Mary Kay Cabot, Jason Lloyd, 3 Cleveland-based journalists who didn't just cover Sanders. They tore into him, relentlessly. They mocked his injuries, inflated minor incidents, like a couple of traffic tickets, into character critiques. Questioned his toughness. Questioned his maturity. Questioned his right to be on the roster. Not once, not occasionally, routinely. And through all of this, Sanders had barely taken meaningful snaps. The narrative wasn't just ahead of reality. It was shaping it. When a player doesn't get to speak with his performance, the press decides who he is. And in Sanders' case, they decided he was a problem before he even had a chance to be a player. That's what pushed Roger Goodell to act. This wasn't about stats. This wasn't about competition. This was about an ecosystem conspiring, maybe not deliberately but functionally, to kill the career of a young black quarterback before it even started. And Goodell knew that if he stayed silent, it would be just another name added to the long list of players who never got a real shot because of how the league operates under the surface. He didn't just issue a quiet statement. He didn't just call a meeting. He publicly called out the media. He named names. And he didn't stop there. He's now reportedly considering removing Stefanski from his role with the Browns. Not because of on-field performance, but because of a pattern of behavior that points to biased, unjustified treatment of a player based on who he is and where he comes from. It's unprecedented. Commissioners don't get involved in coaching decisions unless there's a scandal. But this is different. This is Goodell taking a stand on institutional equity. It's about confronting what the NFL has gotten wrong, repeatedly, when it comes to how black quarterbacks are evaluated, supported, and developed. Because it's not just about SHEDEUR Sanders. It's about the long history of black quarterbacks being denied the benefit of the doubt, being labeled not smart enough or not a leader or not durable before they even take the field. It's about the mental gymnastics teams and media have done for decades to justify why white quarterbacks get time to fail and adjust, while black quarterbacks are expected to be flawless from day one or get labeled a bust. Goodell's intervention here represents a line in the sand. He's saying the NFL's values aren't just going to be plastered on end zones during October or put in press releases during the offseason. They're going to be enforced in real time, even if it means going after people the league has protected for years. And yes, it also means looking inward. Goodell acknowledged that he hasn't always gotten it right, that in years past, he might have let things slide, might have allowed a player like Sanders to get swept up in the machine, chewed up and forgotten, but not this time. Not under his watch. That's a huge shift in tone from the top, and it sends a message across all 32 teams. How you treat players, all players, matters. If your internal culture is quietly choking the growth of young black talent, you're going to be called out. If your media market becomes a tool for biased character assassination, the league will push back. It's no longer enough to say the right things during press conferences. The NFL wants action, accountability, and measurable change. And fans, they've made it clear where they stand. Through all this, fan support for Sanders has only grown, despite the brutal coverage, despite the lack of opportunity, despite being shoved out of the first-team spotlight. People see what's happening. They know the difference between criticism and targeting, and they're not buying the old narratives anymore. The fans are ahead of the league. And now the league is finally playing catch-up. That's why this moment is so much bigger than one quarterback. It's about dismantling the quiet systems that decide which players get groomed and which ones get ghosted, which quarterbacks are leaders and which ones are projects, which mistakes are part of the learning curve, and which ones are proof they're not ready. SHEDEUR Sanders deserved better. And now, because the commissioner actually stepped in, maybe he'll get it. Maybe the next player in his shoes will get it, too. So what's next? If Stefanski is removed, it'll be the first time in league history that a coach is fired. Not for losing games, not for breaking rules, but for perpetuating a racially biased developmental environment. If that happens, it's not just a personnel move. It's a seismic shift. And if the media outlets involved continue to feel pressure, maybe this becomes a reckoning for how sports journalism treats black athletes who don't conform to pre-written storylines. Maybe we start getting coverage that's actually fair. Or maybe the machine pushes back. Maybe the league walks it all back once the headlines fade. That's why people need to keep watching. Because this story isn't over. Not even close. Let us know what you think. Was this the right move by Goodell? Did the media go too far? Should coaches be held accountable when bias gets in the way of development? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button if you've been following this saga, and share it with someone who still believes sports are just about talent and hard work. Because in the NFL, the politics behind the plays matter more than most people want to admit. And if this really is the beginning of a new era where development is earned, not denied, then you're going to want to see how this all ends. Subscribe now, because we'll be here for every twist. There's no denying it anymore. This is a full-blown reckoning for the NFL. And it all started because Roger Goodell, the same commissioner who spent most of his career dodging controversy with vague statements and corporate slogans, finally snapped. The target? A league culture that allowed bias to quietly fester beneath the surface. The spark? One rookie quarterback, SHEDEUR Sanders, being treated like a PR problem instead of a franchise player. And now, the league's foundation is being shaken, one uncomfortable truth at a time. Let's be honest. For years, the NFL has mastered the art of saying the right things while changing very little. Diversity initiatives? Check. End zone slogans? Check. Half-hearted commercials about unity? Check. But when it came down to actual, tangible change, when it came to doing the hard work of calling out injustice happening within teams, within media markets, and within the league's own leadership, the NFL has repeatedly hesitated. Until now, because this situation with SHEDEUR Sanders isn't just a bad look. It's a reflection of a much bigger problem, one that's been hiding in plain sight. Here's what Goodell saw. A young, highly drafted black quarterback, with fan support in the national spotlight, gets thrown into the worst possible setup. Not just underdeveloped, but strategically sidelined. Not just critiqued by media, but discredited. And not just tested in practice, but targeted. Let's not downplay what was happening. Sanders was allegedly getting hit during practices by defenders going way too far, and no one stepped in. Referees didn't blow the whistle. Coaches didn't enforce protection. The unspoken message? He's on his own. And while that's happening on the field, in the media, it was open season. Tony Grossi, Mary Kay Cabot, Jason Lloyd. These are respected journalists, veteran names in Cleveland media. And yet, instead of reporting with objectivity, they fed into a narrative that became less about football and more about tearing down SHEDEUR's character. They exaggerated minor issues like traffic violations into questions of maturity. They laughed off injuries. They painted Sanders not just as underperforming, but as undeserving. That kind of coverage isn't just unfair, it's dangerous. Because in the NFL, perception becomes reality. A player who's repeatedly framed as immature or injury-prone or entitled starts to carry that label into every locker room, every front office conversation, and every opportunity he might have in the future. And when that framing happens before a player is even given real game time, that's not evaluation. That's sabotage. That's what Goodell is fighting now. Not just one bad situation, but a long-standing pattern. Because SHEDEUR isn't the first black quarterback to face this. He's just the latest example of a system that continues to apply a different set of rules to players based on race, background, and how marketable they seem to the powers that be. The difference is, this time the commissioner is stepping in, and not quietly. He's not just sending memos. He's not just shaking hands at social justice summits. He's threatening real consequences, starting with Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski. The fact that Stefanski might be removed specifically over how he handled SHEDEUR Sanders' development, that's a line the league has never crossed before. Coaching decisions, especially those that happen behind closed doors at practice, are almost always protected under the umbrella of football reasons. But now, that shield is being stripped away. Because developmental sabotage isn't just a football decision when it follows a racial pattern. It becomes discrimination. And when the league fails to intervene in that kind of environment, it becomes complicit. That's the shift Goodell is trying to lead. He's saying enough with the double standards. Enough with pretending competition justifies everything. Enough with letting media figures build entire careers off of tearing down young black players before they've had a chance to breathe. And what's wild is that this should not be controversial. What Sanders endured, limited reps, lack of protection, relentless media attacks, would be seen as outrageous for any rookie quarterback, especially one taken high in the draft. But instead, it was normalized, justified, brushed off, because that's what happens when the system is designed to protect the people in power and not the players trying to break through it. The good news? The fans are paying attention. The backlash to the media coverage was immediate. Support for SHEDEUR stayed strong, even grew, despite the negative press. People saw through the performative journalism. They noticed the lack of fairness. They didn't just hear what the reporters were saying. They saw what they weren't saying when it came to other rookies who looked a little different, and that public support matters. Because while the league might be slow to change, it listens when the fan base speaks with one voice. And right now, fans are demanding better treatment, better development, better accountability, and not just for Sanders. For everyone who's ever been boxed out of opportunity because they didn't fit the outdated mold of what a leader looks like. Let's be very clear. This isn't about SHEDEUR Sanders needing special treatment. It's about giving him the same treatment other quarterbacks would have received without question, the same first-team reps, the same patience, the same opportunity to learn from mistakes without the world labeling him a failure. If that's too much to ask for one of the most promising rookies in the league, then we're not talking about football anymore. We're talking about politics. And Goodell, for once, seems ready to call it out for what it is. This could be the start of something bigger. If the league follows through on this, it could finally mark the end of the unspoken rules that have held back players for generations. It could redefine how teams are held accountable for development. It could force media outlets to rethink how they cover athletes, especially young black ones, without resorting to character-based smear campaigns. But none of that happens if the league backs down now. If Stefanski stays and nothing changes, if the reporters go unchecked and keep spinning the same narratives, if the league issues a few diversity workshops and then moves on, then this was all for show. That's why it's up to the fans, the players, and everyone who cares about the future of the league to stay locked in, to keep asking questions, to keep holding the NFL accountable. Because real change doesn't come from press conferences. It comes from pressure. And right now, the NFL is feeling it. So let us know what you think. So now the NFL is standing at a crossroads. And it's not about a blown call or a contract dispute. It's about something far more defining. What kind of league it wants to be when the lights aren't on and no one's watching. Because here's the reality. If SHEDEUR Sanders had just quietly accepted the scout team role, played along, taken hits in practice, and let the media walk all over his name without protest, none of this would have come to light. The same cycle would have played out. A few preseason headlines, some dismissive columns, and then quietly he'd be gone, labeled a bust before he ever got a chance to be a breakout. That's how it usually works. But this time, there was too much noise to ignore. Too many patterns repeating themselves. Too many people watching. And for once, someone in power actually listened. Roger Goodell's move to step in, to defend Sanders, to challenge the behavior of a sitting head coach, to call out members of the media by name, isn't just a break from tradition. It's a break from silence. The kind of silence that's allowed these patterns to stay hidden in plain sight. Because let's be honest, SHEDEUR's situation isn't new. We've seen this before. Black quarterbacks pushed aside for flimsy reasons. Media coverage that starts with doubt and ends with dismissal. Coaches talking about intangibles and readiness, while quietly making sure reps and resources are funneled elsewhere. Fans being told a player just didn't want enough, when in reality, the deck was stacked from day one. But what's different now is that the league itself is calling foul. When Goodell acknowledged that the NFL has failed players like Sanders before, that wasn't PR spin. That was an admission of guilt, of complicity, of patterns that have gone unchecked for too long. And then he did something no one expected. He threatened action. Not words, not workshops, not a campaign slogan on a helmet. Action. And you can bet the league's power structure felt that tremor. If Kevin Stefanski, a head coach with years in the league, a playoff win under his belt, and the support of his front office, can be investigated, possibly removed, because of how he handled one rookie quarterback, that sends a message to every coach in the NFL. You are no longer untouchable. Development matters. Fairness matters. Equity isn't optional. That kind of shift doesn't come easy. And the pushback has already started. Some insiders are calling Goodell's intervention overreach. Others are whispering about setting a dangerous precedent, where performance evaluation is second-guessed from the top. But that argument only holds water if you believe this was a performance issue. It wasn't. SHEDEUR wasn't benched because he struggled in games. He never got a chance to play them. He wasn't demoted because of attitude. He was quiet, composed, and reportedly professional throughout the ordeal. This wasn't about talent. It was about treatment. And when the treatment starts to follow a predictable line based on race, that's not a football problem. It's a structural one. The media's role in this, just as crucial. When reporters decide a player is a distraction or not built for the NFL, before they've even stepped onto the field, that framing sticks. And when that framing is paired with exaggerated scandals and outright mockery, it becomes narrative warfare. And Sanders got hit from all sides. Tony Grossi, Mary Kay Cabot, Jason Lloyd, These aren't rookie bloggers. These are seasoned journalists with platforms, access, and influence. And they use that influence to frame Sanders as someone who was never meant to make it, not because of what he did, but because of who they decided he was. And when the commissioner of the league calls you out by name, that's not just a slap on the wrist. That's accountability knocking at the front door. Because let's be real, sports journalism shapes the way teams make decisions. It informs fan sentiment. It sets the tone for how players are perceived by the public, their peers, and yes, their coaches. So when the media veers into character attacks disguised as analysis, it doesn't just hurt reputations. It ruins careers. That's why Goodell's statement wasn't just about SHEDEUR Sanders. It was about drawing a boundary, saying, this kind of coverage is no longer going to be protected by press credentials and tradition. If you're using your platform to tear down players based on identity, name, or background, not performance, you're part of the problem. And honestly, it's about time. Because fans are ahead of the curve here. They've seen this cycle repeat itself over and over. They watch young black quarterbacks be told they're not leaders, while their white counterparts are praised for confidence. They've seen players get crushed for showing emotion, while others are called passionate competitors. The double standard isn't subtle. It never was. And yet, through all of this, fans still had Sanders back. That's what really broke the mold here. The fact that, despite everything, despite the negative coverage, the lack of snaps, the planted stories, support for SHEDEUR never faded. It only got louder. Online, in stadiums, on podcasts. People were calling out the double standard. They saw the setup. They saw the bias. And they weren't going to let this one slide. Goodell saw that, too. And instead of ignoring it, he acted. The question now is, will the NFL follow through? Because this can't just be a one-time stand. If Stefanski gets a pass, if the media outlets walk away clean, if no internal reviews happen, then it sends a message that nothing's really changed, that it was all just another PR moment in a league full of them. But the NFL holds its ground. If it starts tracking how development decisions are made, if it begins to challenge biased narratives in the media, if it listens to the players and the fans calling for more than just slogans, then maybe this is the start of something real. A league where fairness doesn't have to be demanded. It's expected. Where young black quarterbacks are allowed to grow without being dragged. Where talent is nurtured, not filtered through legacy and race. Where opportunity isn't just a buzzword, it's a baseline. We're not there yet, but this moment, it's closer than we've ever been. So if you've been watching the saga unfold, you know this story's not over. It's not just about one coach, or one quarterback, or even one season. It's about a league deciding what kind of future it wants to build, and whether it's finally ready to hold itself accountable. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let us know where you stand. Was this move from Goodell long overdue? Should Stefanski stay or go? And should media coverage of players face stricter standards when it crosses a line? Like this video if you've been following SHEDEUR's journey. Share it if you're tired of seeing the same patterns get swept under the rug. And subscribe if you're ready to see what happens when the most powerful man in the NFL decides enough is enough. Because this time, it's not just talk. This time, the NFL might finally mean it.